Hey everyone, it's Chelsea from the Allen County Public Library, and today is our first day of Adult Summer Reading. This is our first program, and I'm going to be showing you today how to make a woven bookmark, as you can see right here. It's super simple and very fun to create. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about our Adult Summer Reading program. It's going to be held virtually this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we're going to have a lot more programs than previous years. So we'll have this craft program, we'll have an art program, a couple trivia nights, and a few informative videos like the Grimm side of Grimm fairy tales. So we have a lot of fun stuff in store for you, and if you would like to sign up, all you have to do is click the link in our description of this video, or you can go to our website at allencountylibrary.com and go to the Our Forms tab. And in there you will find a link to the registration, and we will get you set up for this program. It's going to be really great because we have a bingo sheet just like we did last year, and you can fill out and keep up with the activities that you do, the books you read, and be eligible for prizes. And this year we're going to have gift cards to many businesses in the community, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So we hope that you sign up, and we hope to see you here each week. But to get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about weaving and how it pertains to our theme this year. So the theme this year is Imagine Your Story, and that encompasses fantasy stories, mythology, fairy tales, all these mythical sides of storytelling. So in a lot of fairy tales and mythology, weaving and textile making is a large component of it. You can see that in Sleeping Beauty, where the princess has her finger pricked on the spinning wheel. You can see that in Rumpelstiltskin, where the daughter weaves straw into gold. And in many different mythologies, you can see that there were goddesses and gods that had to do with weaving, textile making, spinning. That's all throughout all different sorts of mythology. Specifically in Greek mythology, there were 3 daughters of Zeus, and they were called the Fates. And they were in charge of how long your life was, when you were born, and when you died. So they were almost, in many of the myths, they were more powerful than many of the gods. So they had a lot of power. And I'm going to, in the spirit of those stories, we're going to do a quick bookmark. To get started, you are going to need some scissors, a pen, tape, some yarn, and this is just some scrap yarn that I had lying around the house. It's not very thick. You don't want anything too thick because this will be in a book. So find something that's not too thick, not too thin, just right, like a baby bear. And you'll need a darning needle. You can find these usually in sewing kits, like at the dollar store, if you don't have one at home. And that is all you need to do this project. Super simple. To get started, I have a piece of cardboard that I just cut out of an Amazon box. And as you can see, I've drawn lines that are about 1/5 of an inch apart, and I have 10 here, and that's how many I used for this bookmark. You can do more or less depending on how you want your bookmark to look, but I did 10, and I drew lines just to help me out down the road, and also so I could kind of keep my slats even. So draw those lines and cut those with your scissors, just a little bit of a slit. They don't have to be too deep into your cardboard, but I'll do that in just a second. And then you will take your yarn. Mine's a knotted mess, but you'll take your yarn and you'll tape one end to your cardboard about midways, and we'll start wrapping that around. Okay, so as you can see, I have cut my little notches out, and they are about 1/4 of an inch down, not too far down, and they're not even and perfect, but that's all right. And on the back side, I have taped my yarn about halfway down the piece of cardboard. And to get started, it's really simple. All you have to do is take your yarn up to the top and go through the first slot, and then we're gonna go down to the first slot on the bottom, and we're just gonna work our way across the board. And when you're doing this, it's important to be mindful of your tension of your thread, because we don't want it to be too tight and we don't want it to be too loose, because if it's too loose, our weave can get kind of messy and it won't be very straight and neat. And if we get too tight, it'll bend our cardboard and cause us some trouble down the road. So be mindful of that. We want it to be just right as we work our way across the board. And now when you are doing this, I recommend that you keep your yarn attached to your ball. I have mine cut because I've tested this out before I got started, but you'll want to keep that attached until you know for sure how much yarn you'll need for this. Okay, so I've got all of my yarn on all of the slats down here, so I'm ready to tape it, the other end to the back. So we'll get that nice and tight and tape that there. Okay, so we are now ready to start weaving. All right, so now that I have my loom ready, I've cut a length of yarn, and it's about 2 yards worth of yarn. I just eyeballed it. I don't want it to be too long because it can knot up, but I also don't want it to be too short, because then I'll have a lot of ends that I have to weave in at the end. So I've done this a couple times, and I use about 2 strands of yarn. So cut out about 2 yards of yarn, and we're going to thread it onto your darning needle, and we'll get started here. So I start by going, you can either start going under or start going over, it doesn't matter, but we're going to just go back and forth between the threads. Under 1, over 1, under 1, over 1. And you can use your hands if you don't want to use the needle. You can just do this by hand. It doesn't matter at all, but I've just got used to using the needle. All right, so I have been leaving maybe 1.5 inches or so down at the bottom. That way I have room for my tassels, and I didn't want my bookmark to be too awful long, but that's up to you. If you want a really long bookmark that covers the full length of a book, you can make your cardboard longer and have a longer bookmark. It's completely up to you. So I've done my first one, and then we're just going to work our way back. So I ended with an over, so I'm going to start by going under this time. So under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. We'll pull that through. And when you're starting your weave, it's important to get a good tension. The past couple times I've made this, I've made it slightly tighter than the original. Like you can see here, the line, I'm going to go make it a little tighter than how they are formed on the loom here. But that's just so that my weave's a little tighter. If you want yours to be a little looser, that's totally up to you. But I have these lines here as a guide, because I don't know if you can notice on my example, I get a little tight. I started on this end and I get a little tighter as I go, but it doesn't matter. Imperfections are just fine, but it's something to be conscious of as you do your loom or your weave. So as you can see how it's starting to make a little basket weave pattern there. I might tighten it up a little bit once I get established, but I've ended on an over, so I'm going to start with an under and work my way through. All right. And see, I've got my yarn doubled up here, so that's something to be mindful also. You don't want to get 2 strands of your yarn in at the same time. We'll fix that in just a second. So I'm going to push my thread down so that it's nice and a tight weave. I'll pull a little bit on there. If you're really concerned about keeping it straight, you also might want to have a line, draw a line across here where you're going to keep keep that weave straight. But I think it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna do a few more here to show you, and then we'll speed it up so you can see the finished product. And I'm gonna fix that tail end there. You don't want two strands going through, so we're just gonna pull that out. We'll have that problem as we go, as we work through our yarn, but just work that out as you go, because you don't want, you'll go through your thread a lot faster that way. Okay, we got it nice and tight. We're just gonna push those down. All right, you can see that. We'll do one more. Looking good. So at this point you might want to tape, or even before you get started, you might want to tape your tail end here so it's not flopping around on you. You want to be sure anytime that you have a tail, let's say you get done with this thread and you're going to start a new one, you want to make sure that you have a little bit of length at the end so that you have room to weave that tail into your bookmark, and it won't come undone, because you don't want holes in this thing. So I'm gonna tape that down. And this is how it's gonna look once you get it all done, all the way down, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. All right, so as you can see, we've got our weave completely done. We have just about an inch, inch and a half left on each side, and I've left a few inches on the end of each strand. I'm going to turn over, and this is how we're going to take off our bookmark off the loom and how we are going to create our tassels. So I just cut these off right in the middle of the board. Okay, and this was on the back side. We'll turn it over to the front, and I'm going to take 2 of these out at a time. And from here, we're going to just wrap it around our finger once, and we'll tuck those ends through, and we're going to make just a simple knot here. I'm just going to tie both of those loops together, and we're going to slide it as close as we can get it to the weave itself, like so. All right, and we're going to do that all the way across. Wrap around the finger, loop it through, slide it down, the next two. Loop it around the finger. There's 3. I mentioned earlier in my video that I always get a little tighter as I go, and it seems like I did it yet again, but that's okay. I think that's just how it goes sometimes. With a little practice, I'm sure you could get better at that. Okay, here's the last one on this side. All right, so there is one side. All of our knots are made, and you'll just do that to the other end. So as you can see, I have tied off both ends. The tassels are a little long right now, but we're going to fix that in just a little bit. I'm first going to show you how to weave in your ends here. So I've gone ahead and threaded my needle through one of the ends, and what I'll do is I will take the needle and I'll run it through with one of my original lines of thread that was on the loom. So I'll go in between or behind each of these bumps in this one row. So there's 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter how many bumps you go through. We just want to be sure that we go through enough that our thread is secure and it's not going to come undone. I'll do a couple more maybe. There we go. All right, so there's one. And then all you do is pull it through like that. And we'll take the needle off. And with your scissors, you're just going to trim up that tail. Okay, and then you can't hardly see that at all. So you're going to do that to each of your threads. I have 4. If you have a longer bookmark, or if you use smaller lengths of thread, you might have more. But you'll just follow that same pattern and pull them through. The only thing you might want to pay attention to is the ones in the middle. You might have to kind of follow that bump around so that there's not a huge noticeable difference in the pattern. I've gotten all of my ends woven in, and I just want to make a couple notes to you. When you are weaving in your tails, be sure that you don't all go in the same direction or all in the same row. So right here is where I had my 2 threads joined together, and I wove one this direction and one this direction so that there's not a bulky area of the bookmark. And also up here I had one that came up to about here, and then I had a thread over here that needed to be woven, so I just moved it over one more row so they are going in opposite directions and different rows, so that they're not interfering with each other and they're not making it too bulky. So just be mindful of that whenever you do that. And now we're going to cut the tassels. So the way to make them even, and the easiest way to cut them, is fold your bookmark in half, and then you can have them as long as you want. I like them about 1 inch or so, 1.5 inches. So I'm going to do just a rough guess of how long that is. You can be more precise if you want to be. And be sure not to cut your hand or your fingers. And that is your bookmark. All done. All right, that's it. We've made our bookmark in just a few simple steps. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. And I hope above all else, that you sign up for Adult Summer Reading. We're gonna have a lot of fun, and I can't wait for you to see what all we have planned for you. Just be sure to click on the link in the description and fill out that form, and we'll send you all the information that you need for that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.